very sad week in the Marvel Universe, in the comic book world in general. We just found out yesterday being Monday, that Stan Lee died. This is obviously something that was not surprising. I think we were all, we weren't waiting for it, but he's 95.
He's 95. He wasn't in the best of health.
Not in the best of health. We knew 2 years ago when they announced that he was never going to do signings again.
Right.
That obviously he was slowly going towards retirement, permanent retirement. Oh God, that sounded horrible. I'm a horrible human being.
No, it's okay.
I love Stan Lee. I really have nothing bad to say. Everything I say just tends to come out poo-poo. But we lost Stan Lee this week. He is a legend. He created Marvel Comics along with Jack King Kirby, Steve Ditko. I think it's very well known what he's contributed, and it's a lot more than just cameos in every Marvel movie that's ever existed.
Right.
This man created the comic book characters we love, the Spider-Man, the Captain America, the XMen. For me, he is a legend, and we're gonna miss him. And I think it's best we forget about that last year or two with the weird stuff going on, and just concentrate on who he was for the last 95 years,
exactly.
93 years, and really want to hammer home that forever. Like, when you think of comic book universes, you think of Marvel, you think of Stan Lee and Steve Ditko.
I couldn't tell you who created DC Comics.
So that's where I was going with this.
Yeah.
Like, I could not tell you who the Stan Lee is for DC Comics.
There isn't one.
Yeah, there isn't one.
Nope.
I could tell you who created, like, Superman. I can't really tell you who created Batman. I forgot the name of the...
Bob Kane and Bill Finger.
You're right. Okay. If you say it...
Bob Kane.
Yeah, that's
Bob
what
Kane.
it was. Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like, cool, Bob Kane.
But who else know? Like, we know that because we're nerds.
Yeah.
But in general, like, my mom knew who Stan Lee was.
Absolutely.
Do you think they're going to turn Stan Lee into like a Dave from Wendy's type sitch, where like he becomes the mascot?
I hope not. I think he was far enough removed in the end. I think his controlling estate might do something, but I think Marvel can't at this point.
Oh, okay.
I think they were able to separate themselves.
They've separated themselves from him, but yet he could still totally pop up like a mascot character.
He could be. I don't think I want that to be his legacy, though.
Nor
in
do
general, I think I don't want to think about that, even though it could go that way. But
yeah.
I think Wendy's is a little different than Stan Lee. I think his legacy, what he created, goes far beyond the hamburger. Even though we love, obviously, Wendy's social account, we're a huge fan of Wendy's social account. Stan Lee. So Chris Gethard went on his Facebook yesterday and trying to help people get like over this or just get through this kind of sad moment, to talk about their favorite comic book, what really stayed with them, what one issue meant the most to them. And it oddly popped into my mind. There was actually two, but I thought that was a great way to talk through what was going on. So I'd love
Absolutely.
to like discuss it with you guys. Hambone, let's talk to you. What stands out in your mind? What Marvel comic really changed comic books for you? Really? Oh, you have it.
Oh yeah. No,
Wow.
I had it easy access in my apartment. Now I don't keep very many of my comics like handy in my
I'm
apartment.
shocked it's an X-Men comic.
It is, and what it is, it's X-Men God Loves, Man Kills by Chris Claremont. You want to talk about Stan Lee, where he started, and he really breaking color barriers, breaking the ideas of what just a regular superhero should be. Social justice, even if you're a weirdo. I'm getting choked up.
Oh, Hambone. But look, I'll let you get choked up, and I'll talk a little bit about it. I think, and I'm going to pick an X-Men comic, pick two X-Men comics. What made Stan Lee so great, and why the X-Men were so great, is that they made it cool. Like, these are superheroes. And in general, superheroes like Superman and Batman are badass. Like, they can do no wrong. For me, growing up, like, being beaten up a lot, like, being picked on, being a geek, being a weirdo that didn't have a ton of friends, having the X-Men really helped me realize that you can be a superhero, but still be... still be a weird, still be different, and it'd be okay to be different.
That you don't have to be the archetype of,
Captain America,
Superman, the jock of the football team, and still matter.
Yeah.
Like you don't need. I'm sorry, I said that weird. You don't have to be that to matter. You can be a weirdo. You can be a complete outcast. You can have weird colored skin like Nightcrawler, you know, like, or be covered in hair like Beast. Or
No,
you know,
I completely agree.
all of that is all of this. What they're saying, that's what's happening here.
Like, so I'm gonna move to me then.
Well, no, I mean, that's
go ahead.
you know, I mean,
We got to meet Stanley.
we got to meet Stanley. It was, I can't believe it's getting me like this because we're all outsiders.
Yeah.
And back to you guys.
Okay, so I'm going to the issue. First of all, issue 213, which I think we talked about, X-Men 213, was the issue that got me into comic books. That was the Mutant Massacre. That was the issue when Wolverine and Sabretooth fought, and then Psylocke, a woman. This is Wolverine and Sabretooth beating the shit out of each other. This is like 86, 87. Psylocke, who all she is a low-level telepath, was able to fry Sabretooth's brain to end the Mutant Massacre,
Awesome.
which I thought was so different at the time to have like this, like nowadays with the Me Too move and everything, you think, well, this is normal. Back then, it was very strange to have a female who, when at the time, female superheroes were like Dazzler and Sparkled,
Right.
to have someone who could beat Sabretooth when Wolverine can't.
Especially
very powerful.
Especially when they're so often drawn as just sex objects and nothing more than just eye candy, or it's like, oh, well, she's Jean Grey, she's the most powerful telepath in the universe, but she's like Cyclops' girlfriend, and she's just a love interest.
And that's why I love that. But the issue for me was 251. Uncanny X-Men 251 was the issue with Wolverine crucified to an X on the cover. And it was so powerful, so sacrilegious, so I felt like this was like something I had to hide from my parents.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a superhero comic. And then I opened it up and read it, and in the first few panels, the remaining X-Men, I believe it's Dazzler, Storm, Havoc, a couple others, Colossus maybe not Storm, they kill themselves.
Yeah.
They choose to end their lives by going through the Siege Perilous instead of continuing this world where they will never be treated as equals. That alone, that's the first couple panels. Then it turns out Wolverine's still alive, shows up from Japan to the Australian back rack, like to the Australian back, what's the word? Outback. Like, hey, I'm home, guys. How you guys all doing? And the Reavers are there, having murdered everyone left, and basically proceed to. It turns into basically a murder porn, horror porn comic book for an entire issue where they just beat Wolverine to an inch of his life, and then he's saved by Jubilee.
Right.
And this was like the first or second issue of Jubilee. That issue made me realize that comics could be scary.
Right.
They could be powerful. These are our superheroes that are choosing to sacrifice themselves instead of go on in this world that doesn't love them. Wolverine, one of the most powerful mutants in the world, being beaten and crucified to a cross. That is one of the most powerful images to me, and it's forever ingrained in my head. Adam, what about you? What comic book really helped personify your youth?
I guess I'm gonna have to go with what I guess now is the thing everybody knows, but the Infinity Gauntlet. When I was a kid, I remember that coming out and that being like the first big comic event when I was a kid, and it was the first thing I think I read all the way through. And you know, everybody's either knows the story by now, or
You kind of have
they
to.
don't want the spoilers of what
Yes.
happens on the second half. But it was it's sort of in the same way that you're saying, and I know this is wider Marvel Universe than just X-Men, but I will never forget the jarring feeling of being a kid and during what we now know as the snap, like in the book, reading like having to like process the death of these characters that you think of as immortal, you know, or however you think of them. And straight up, this is going to sound ridiculous, but that was one of my first instances with having to think about the concept of death. Was the Infinity Gauntlet, because I didn't have any family members die until I was a little bit older. So I had never experienced it, and here are these characters that I think of as permanent, and they're just gone. And it's, you know, for people who just know the Infinity War movies, or whatever the hell they're called, that probably sounds absurd that my first ever time on this planet thinking about death was the Infinity Gauntlet book,
look,
but it was.
You're younger than us a little bit.
Yeah.
I remember the Infinity Gauntlet. I think I was maybe in middle school or starting high school. The Infinity Gauntlet was a self-contained crossover, whereas at the time, all the big crossover events were kind of, first of all, very mutant-driven, or Secret Wars. After Secret Wars, it was very Inferno, Mutant Massacre.
Right.
But they weren't really a self-contained story as much as they were just like an overlapping web of every. It's a money grab. It was a way to get everybody to buy like Spider-Man because there was a crossover with Wolverine.
Right.
Infinity Gauntlet was really, I don't remember if it was 6 or 9 issues, 8 issues.
I don't remember
6.
exactly.
6,
but I was a big fan of Silver Surfer. Mm-hmm. That's how I was like, oh, I need to read this. Go ahead, sorry.
No, that's fine. So Infinity Gauntlet really was the first time, with the exception of maybe the Dark Phoenix saga, which I don't know if I had read at the time or not, where I had this like real strong story arc, self-contained. You could just read those issues and feel like you've read a novel.
Right.
Yeah. It was huge too. I remember the posters. I have a frame. I think I still have a framed poster from when that came out, which is, one of those things where at the time my mom was like, we got to get this. It's going to pay for your college.
Right.
And then I was like, not only did I not go to college, Mom, but comics are worth nothing because every mom did that.
Yep. We all had. I have my entire set upstairs. Eventually, I'll get them graded. But I know what you mean, and that was a great choice. And a lot of people in Chris's thread did note the Infinity Gauntlet. I realized that does make sense for people a little younger than me.
Right.
I think people who collected comics heavily when the early 90s, the heavy high point, I got into it the mid 80s, so I was a little more, the X-Men stuff really stayed true to me, the Infernos and the Mutant Massacres. Hambone, let's go back to you. God Loves Man Kills.
God Loves Man Kills is an amazing social commentary, and from starting in the 60s where he broke color barriers. Stan Lee. He created so many different things and so many different feelings, and was taking something on the surface that was very like, oh, it's funny. Chris Bewley the other day posted on Facebook with the Stan Lee cameo in Mallrats, where he's talking about like, well, Dr. Doom, and he's all scarred on the inside, but that's how I felt because like my girlfriend left me. Like, everything on the surface was so like, oh, I'm a Hulk, I'll smash, but really it's, you're looking deeper into the human psyche, and that's something that always kind of stuck out to me, Stan Lee, because it was more like, yeah, you're this way on the outside because on the inside, maybe you don't feel so great.
Yep.
So for me, I always say, I try not to be, maybe sometimes cavalier about it, but I try not to get too worked up about feeling ways about people I've never really met before, never really known when they pass. But to you, Stan, I'll say, Excelsior.
Nope, that means a lot. God Loves Man Kills. Was that X-Men 2? Is that the one they made into the movie?
This comic right here, and you can find it on the Marvel Unlimited app. This is what kind of got melded into the first Marvel movie.
Really, I thought it was I thought it was the second X-Men one.
The first one was with
because the first one was the origin. It was Wolverine and Rogue. I think it was the second one. X2 was largely God Loves Man and Kills. I mean, it wasn't X3.
Yeah, you're right. 2.
Yeah.
Yep, 2, you're right.
So if you've seen X2 and you love X2 and it is one of the best, it's based largely off of God Loves Man Kills, but you should read it. That's another great self-contained graphic novel. Love it. You know what I was thinking back on?
What?
When we went to Stan Lee's memorial service.
Okay, yes, we should definitely talk about this.
Yes. So 2 years ago at Comic-Con, Hambone and I went to, and Ian went to Madison Square Garden's theater to see. It was kind of it was really a tribute to Stan Lee, and they had some famous creators, Chris Claremont. I don't remember the other people. It was
Walt
Simonson, and a few others get on stage with Stan Lee to talk about. I think they were supposed to talk about Marvel Comics. Instead, it turned into not really a roast. It turned into like literally a memorial for Stan Lee sitting right there.
So Kevin Smith is
moderating
this, and we went there, and I got us the thing. So me, George, and Ian went to go meet Stan Lee, and it was awesome. There's great pictures. I'm sure you could find it on George's Facebook or Instagram. You can find it on mine, definitely. And that night we went to the Garden, and it was supposed to be about the backstory of Marvel as
storytelling
as told to you by like the editors and the writers about the Marvel bullpen. So we're like, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to get some great behind the scenes stuff. And we get there, and it was an hour. It was an hour long, and everyone in the place is kind of quiet. People are like kind of quietly crying everywhere around this place because these are men who were on the stage looking at Stan Lee going, this is the last time I'm ever going to see you again. And they start like, thank you, Stan. Oh my God. They were talking about him in the past tense.
Yes, Chris Claremont talking him in the past tense. And Stanley, the best part was, Adam, Stan Lee looks at them and goes, I'm not dead yet. I'm sitting right here. But it was, and I really hope that is taped and is shown somewhere.
They have to.
It was a full hour where everyone there was saying what Stan Lee means to them. And I think it was a bait and switch on purpose.
Yeah.
I think it was to get Stan Lee there so they could do not a roast, but more like we're going to talk about what you mean to us. It's just when they were talking in the past tense, that was freaky.
It was not a roast. I laugh at roasts. I didn't laugh once.
Well, I think they were going for something like that because
they failed
because they had Kevin Smith as the host.
Oh, he blew it.
But it was so strange. So we went to Stanley's memorial service, and they should just play that.
They should play that
because it was the greatest celebration of Stanley's life. And if you were there, you saw something that I will forever remember this. And I'm a Chris Claremont fan, like that's because of XMen.
Right.
But to see them all talking about him was just amazing.
One of the things I thought of after he died, was I was really happy for him, I guess, in some weird way, that he got to see how big his characters are. Like some of those characters, to certain groups of people, were huge for forever. But like now we're at a spot where arguably we're getting to solidifying some of these guys like Spider-Man or Captain America and stuff up there with getting near to Mickey Mouse levels of recognition. And it's just it's cool that that's from his perspective. If you look at it from his perspective as creating these characters, blah blah blah, by the end of your life to get to the point where you get to see that entire ascension, is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So you said it best. Rest in peace, Stan. We appreciate everything you've done for us, and Excelsior.
Excelsior.
You might need to end this show with that this week.
That might be it.
But and you got to see a side of Hambone that we've seen many a times. But
look, I'm not tough. Don't let the tattoos fool you. I'm a tattooed bad boy with a heart of gold.
No, we're all there with you. We get it too.
We're all true believers.
Anyway.